Well, good morning. I have myself a nice, strong, fresh cup of coffee, and I'm ready to talk movies. Ladies and gentlemen, I must admit that I very often pick on the French. It's understandable because the French culture is one that lends itself to ridicule quite readily. However, that said, the filmmakers under the company of Film Seekers has put together what I think I will call an anthology, though some purebreds might say that's not exactly right. And this is a fairly decent horror movie that serves as today's lesson plan. As cinematic class is about to begin, and your professor is it? Greetings, salutations, another sundry affair. I am your cinematic professor and purveyor of truth in movies. And I really have to say that I'd have to look long and hard to find a French film that I could sit back and say I really enjoyed. But this one kept me a bit captivated, I must say. Hope springs eternal. This movie tries to pull it out of you, but it doesn't. Now, I alluded in the beginning that some purists may not actually consider this an anthology, but I think it does. There are three different stories in this. There's the car wreck, there's the evil child, and there's the bad mother. But they're really not separate stories, and those certainly aren't the titles of them. And the way they're thrown into the movie is a little bit different than the way most horror anthologies do it. I think it was pardon me, kind of creative, and I think it came out pretty good here. Still early in the morning. Pardon me just a moment. That's very good stuff. Strong. Okay, so the movie opens up with a car accident, and Nathan and Daniel have been involved in this accident. Nathan is played by Hugo Dillon, and Daniel is played by, here comes a big one now, Orbin Bajrakara. Okay, now Daniel was on a bike, and Nathan was in a car, and they get out of the wreck, and they see the wreck, and they go, oh my god, this was terrible. Is everybody okay? And it is only then that they walk over to the wreck and find out they're still in there. they're dead. Okay, so what we have is their spirits kind of talking to each other, and they have a most interesting a life after death discussion that goes on for about 20-25 minutes before you start getting into some spooky stuff with doors and I don't know, some kind of demonic spiders and stuff like that. And you'll see it. It's kind of interesting to see how that all plays out. Now, our story then focuses on Nathan, and Nathan, boy, this guy's got some. Try as he may to make his argument uh, for A, why he should stay alive, and B, why he should not be sentenced to hell. And just nobody will listen to him. Nobody's paying attention. It's kind of like when Biden speaks, nobody's just like, yeah, that type of thing. And what happens is when he is tossed into, for lack of a better term, the waiting room before the demons come to take him to his own little private hell, it is strewn with other bodies. And naturally, still being somewhat curious, he goes to check on some of these bodies. And as he touches the bodies, we see their story as to how they ended up in the waiting room as well as it is presented to Nathan, and that's kind of interesting. The one, boy, it really reminded me of the Bad Seed. Remember that? What, years ago? You got to go back some time for that one. You know, that little girl was just wow. There was all kind of problems going on there. And that first story in the, well, second, I guess, if you count the wreck as the first, that second story in the trilogy reminds me so much of the Bad Seed. The Bad Seed was one of my favorite movies when I was growing up as a wee bairn, and I used to like watching it just because that girl was so nasty. And this one falls into place too, so it has a lot of neat elements going on in it. And then the next story is, wow, I bet a lot of people would call it a cultural lambasting of bad parenting. Okay, so it's a story about a mother and daughter, and it shows the rather terrible consequences when a lack of communication between the two really drops down to practically nothing. And it's kind of a, I could tell from these stories, you could tell that this is not a very uplifting movie. It's not one that, it's not going to end well. And probably from the very beginning, it's not going to end well. But there is always this ray of hope that is presented. And in the presentation, you keep thinking, well, maybe there will be this silver lining to this very dark cloud. The French don't operate like that. Here's a look now at Pandemonium.
On pense toujours avoir la vie devant soi jusqu'à ce qu'elle s'arrête. La vie après la mort existe. Je suis vraiment mort alors? S'il devait y avoir un doute, je crois qu'il n'y en a plus. C'est le passage vers l'autre monde. On va aller dans un bel endroit et tout ira très bien. Viens.
Vous allez tous les deux aller en enfer pour ce que vous m'avez fait.
Je suis où?
J'accompagne les âmes avant qu'elles ne se fassent tourmenter pour l'éternité. Je serai votre accompagnant. Après la mort, il n'y a que l'enfer.
Vous êtes complètement fou.
La flatterie ne vous mènera nulle part.
Tu vas être bien là-dedans.
Vous avez besoin de voir la réalité en face.
Rejoignez. L'humanité est mauvaise par nature et doit expier.
So there's a look at Pandemonium. And like I said, this one is kind of eerie. It's kind of, it reminded me a lot of Rod Serling. Some of the stories that Rod Serling would produce were, well, they were true horror in that there was some kind of demon or what have you. But a lot of his horror basically was relied on, if you will, the nastiness of the human mind and the human spirit and the human persona. And I think these stories kind of feed into that a lot. The stories, like most anthologies, the stories had different writers. So, time for the spec so I can butcher up some French names for you here. Writing the stories were Celia Conchener, Pauline Leclerc, and Leah Shabo. They all three have done a very nice job in putting these tales together. Probably the little girl was the weirdest one. The one with the mother and daughter, if it needed to be edited, would go in there. But the movie is fine, clogging in at 90 minutes exactly. Director of photography for this movie was Hugo Poisson. And Hugo has done a pretty good job in shooting this. There's nothing overtly noticeable. There are a few special effects scenes. There is a unique element where there are a few demons, monsters, if you will, that are presented in the story arc. And initially, Hugo keeps them in shadow, so you get a tease of what these creatures look like. And then eventually, before that story comes to a conclusion, they are back in full light, and you get to see the makeup and special effects for the movie. And in charge of all post production was Nicholas Bataller, and the director for this whole cascade of stories and tales was Quarks. One name. I like these one name people. Okay, director. Okay, so those are the people behind the scenes, and I think now it might be, well, yes, that time. Time to peel back the veils of time and enter into the early Cretaceous period. For the nation's first and only prehistoric film critic, Rex.
A far more than look into hell and tortured souls. A look at horror that comes from the depths of the inner mind. Good horror anthology. The French are not only non-hygienic, but now Mormon as well.
So, thank you, Rex, for that insightful commentary. So, I think you're going to, this was one of those movies that after you initially watch it, it sits on you like a wet towel. And it takes a while for it to soak down through your head and shoulders, and no plug there. And then you get to appreciate what's going on in this. So, as I slept on this movie, pardon me, overnight, I began to appreciate it a little bit more. And as I said, it's a horror tale that is more reminiscent of the, say, Rod Serling type of horror tale rather than the Clive Barker or the John Carpenter type of horror tale, that type of thing. I kind of like this one. And like I said, it's been a long time since I've liked a French movie. So they hit this one out of the park. I think it was a pretty good movie. And I do believe that you will enjoy it as well. It's going to get an above average grade from your old professor here. And I'd like to tell you that if you like this review and want to be kept on the bleeding edge of what's going on, especially on the independent scene, you need to subscribe. So there's a little button, what venue you're watching this on right now, there's a little button that says subscribe. You click on that, it's free. It's not going to cost you anything, at least not now anyway. You click on subscribe, and anytime I post a review, which is at least once a week, you will be notified right away. This way you can check out. And sometimes that's a really good thing, because it's better to know what you're getting into before you lay down the cost of that theater ticket, which are rising incredibly. Dare I say, Bidenomics. So, at least you have a better idea where you might want to spend your money. This one was pretty good, I think. And don't forget that Rex Reel has his very own store. On the last interview, we featured the grilling aprons. And we're going to do that again because there was a a huge demand for those. And I can see why. We've had some beautiful weather recently, and grilling time is out. I mean, I think I've been on my grill almost every other day, firing up some tasty morsels. And this grill is excellent for covering up, making sure you don't get sauce on all that good kind of stuff. It's the official Rex Reel store. We do it through Redbubble. Here's your URL. Here's another look at those aprons. You will be the pride of your neighborhood, man, when they see you with that in your backyard and that flame just bursting, and then that aroma fills the air. Oh yeah, it'll be epic, to say the least. The official Rex Reel Ribbon Apron, and we're featuring them. The movie from the company Film Seekers is Pandemonium. It is French. You will have to read the subtitles, but they are presented in plenty of time that you can read and still see what's going on in the story. If you like things that are really eerie and off the wall, you're really going to enjoy this one. And now that you have learned what you have learned, here ended your lesson.